and welcome back to my vlog. Tea Leaves, part 20. An account of the transaction drawn up by the Boston Committee was carried by Paul Revere to New York and Philadelphia. When the news reached New York, vast numbers of the people collected. They were in high spirits, one and all declaring that the ships with tea on board designed for that port should on arrival be sent back or the tea destroyed. They highly extolled the Bostonians for what the people had done and immediately forwarded the news to Philadelphia. When Revere, on his return, brought word that Governor Tryon had engaged to send the New York tea ships back, all the bells in Boston were rung next morning. Extract from a letter to the Sons of Liberty in New York, dated Boston, December 17, 1773. The bearer is chosen by the committee from a number of gentlemen who volunteered to carry you this intelligence. We are in a perfect jubilee. Not a Tory in the whole community can find the least fault with our proceedings. The spirit of the people throughout the country is to be described by no terms in my power. Their conduct last night surprised the Admiral and the English gentlemen, who observed that these were not a mob of disorderly rabble, as they have been reported, but men of sense, coolness, and intrepidity. Maybe that's it. Intrepidity. They were intrepid. The tea shipped to South Carolina, 257 chests, arrived on the 2nd of December. So strenuous was the opposition to its being landed that the consignees were persuaded to resign. Though the collector, after the 20th day, seized the dutiable article, as no one would sell it or pay the duty, it perished in the damp cellars where it was stored. On December 25, news reached Philadelphia that its tea ship was at Chester. The Delaware pilots had been warned by printed handbills not to conduct any tea ships into the harbor, as they were only sent for the purpose of enslaving and poisoning the Americans. 4 miles below the town, it came to anchor. On the 27th, news of what had occurred in Boston having arrived, 5,000 men collected in town meeting at an hour's notice. At their suggestion, the consignee, who came as passenger, resigned, and the captain agreed to take his ship and cargo back to London the very next day. The ship Nancy, Captain Lockyer, destined for New York, having been blown off the coast, refitted at Antigua, and proceeding thence to New York, arrived there April 18, 1774. Some of the committee went on board and prevented her coming up to the city, but the captain was allowed to procure some necessary stores and then, by the advice of the consignees, returned to London without breaking bulk. A quantity of tea, private property, was imported from London, and an application from the consignee to have it returned to England was refused by the custom house officers. A number of Mohawks then took charge of the business and emptied the whole of it into the sea. A few days later, Captain Chambers, master of the ship London, trading to New York, who had on a former occasion received the thanks of her citizens for refusing to bring the East India Company's tea, was detected in introducing 18 boxes of fine tea curiously concealed between blankets, etc., which he intended to smuggle, but the people having discovered it, immediately threw it into the sea, and the captain, to escape the wrath of the people, took refuge in Captain Lockyer's vessel and sailed for England. Opposition to the obnoxious tea duty had by no means subsided when, in October 1774, the brigantine Peggy Stewart approached Annapolis, Maryland, with a cargo of tea on board. At once there was a great commotion. Terror seized the owners. They applied to Charles Carroll for advice. He told them there was but one way to save their persons and property from swift destruction, and that was to burn their vessel and cargo instantly and in sight of the people. It was done, and the flames did for Annapolis what the Mohawks had done for Boston. This, said Hutchinson, referring to the action of Boston, was the boldest stroke that had been struck in America. Writing to Sir Francis Bernard, he spoke of it as an unfortunate event, and what everybody supposed impossible after so many men of property had made part of the meetings and were in danger of being liable for the value of it. It would have given me a much more painful reflection, he continued, if I had saved it by any concession to a lawless and highly criminal assembly of men, to whose proceedings the loss must be consequently attributed, and the probability is that it was a part of their plan from the beginning. We do console ourselves, wrote John Scollay, chairman of the selectmen of Boston and prominent in the affair, that we have acted constitutionally. The most magnificent movement of all, wrote John Adams in his diary, there is a dignity, a majesty, a solemnity in this last effort of the patriots that I greatly admire. This destruction of the tea is so bold, so daring, so firm, so intrepid and inflexible, and it must have so important consequences and so lasting, that I cannot but consider it as an epoch in history. The question is whether the destruction of the tea was necessary. I apprehend it was absolutely and indispensably so. To let it be landed would be giving up the principle of taxation by parliamentary authority, against which the continent has struggled for 10 years. But, it will be said, it might have been left in the care of a committee of the town, or in Castle William. To this, many objections may be urged. The historian Ramsay says, if the American position was right in relation to taxation, the destruction of the tea was warranted by the great law of self-preservation. For it was not possible for them by any other means within the compass of probability to discharge the duty they owed to their country. I cannot but express my admiration of the conduct of this people, writes an Imperial Observer in the Boston Evening Post of December 20, 1773. I shall return home doubly fortified in my resolution to prevent that deprecated calamity, the landing the tea in Rhode Island, and console myself with the happier assurance that my brethren have not less resolution than their neighbors. More tomorrow. Make it a great day, and bye for now.